Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies, and this is Bridge Builders of the Middle Ages from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Bridge Builders of the Middle Ages. Before speaking of the Pontifices, or the Fraternity of Bridge Builders, whose history is closely connected with that of Freemasonry of the Middle Ages, it will be well to say something of the word which they assumed us the title of their brotherhood. The Latin word pontifex, which its equivalent English pontiff, literally signifies the builder of a bridge, from pons, a bridge, and facere, to make. But this sense, which it must have originally possessed, it seems very speedily to have lost, and we, as well as the Romans, only recognize pontifex or pontiff as significant of a sacerdotal character. Of all the colleges of priests in ancient Rome, the most illustrious was that of the pontiffs. The College of Pontiffs was established by Numa, and originally consisted of 5, but was afterwards increased to 16. The whole religious system of the Romans, the management of all the sacred rites, and the government of the priesthood was under the control and direction of the College of Pontiffs, of which the Pontifex Maximus, or High Priest, was the presiding officer and the organ through which its decrees were communicated to the people. Hence, when the Papal Church established its seat at the city of Rome, its bishop assumed the designation of Pontifex Maximus as one of his titles, and pontiff and pope are now considered equivalent terms. The question naturally arises as to what connection there was between religious rites and the building of bridges, and why a Roman priest bore the name which literally denoted a bridge builder. Etymologists have in vain sought to solve the problem, and, after all their speculation, failed to satisfy us. One of the most tenable theories is that of Schmitz, who thinks the Pontifices were so called because they superintended the sacrifices on a bridge, alluding to the Argean sacrifices on the Sublution Bridge. But Varro gives a more probable explanation when he tells that the Sublution Bridge was built by the Pontifices and that it was deemed, for its historical association of so sacred a character, that no repairs could be made on it without a previous sacrifice, which was to be conducted by the chief pontiff in person. The true etymology is, however, undoubtedly lost, yet it may be interesting as well as suggestive to know that in old Rome there was, even in a mere title, supposing that it was nothing more, some sort of connection between the art or practice of bridge building and the mysterious sacerdotal rites established by Noma, a connection which was subsequently again developed in the Masonic Association, which is the subject of the present article. Whatever may have been this connection in pagan Rome, we find, after the establishment of Christianity and in the Middle Ages, a secret fraternity organized as a branch of the traveling Freemasons of that period, whose members were exclusively devoted to the building of bridges and who were known as Pontifices or Bridge Builders, and styled by the French the following, or Pontifical Brethren, and by the German thus, or Brethren of the Bridge. It is of this fraternity that, because of their association in history with the early corporations of Freemasons, it is proposed to give a brief sketch. In the 11th and 12th centuries, the methods of intercommunication between different countries were neither safe nor convenient. Travelers could not avail themselves on the comforts of either macadamized roads or railways. Stage coaches were unknown. He who was compelled by the calls of business to leave home trudged as a pedestrian warily on foot, or as an equestrian, if his means permitted that mode of journeying, made a solitary ride through badly constructed roads, where he frequently became the victim of robbers, who took his life as well as his purse, or submitted to the scarcely less heavy extracts of some lawless baron, who claimed it as his high prerogative to levy a tax on every wayfarer who passes through his domains. Inns were infrequent, incommodious, and expensive, and the wary traveler could hardly have appreciated Shenstone's declaration that whoever has traveled life's dull round Wherever his stages may have been, may sigh to think he still has found his warmest welcome at an inn. But one of the greatest embarrassments to which the traveler in this olden time was exposed occurred when there was a necessity to cross a stream of water. The noble bridges of the ancient Greeks and Romans had been destroyed by time or war, and the intellectual debasement of the Dark Ages had prevented their renewal. Hence, when refinement and learning began to awaken from that long sleep which followed the invasion of the Goths and Vandals and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, the bridgeless rivers could only be crossed by swimming through the rapid current or by fording the shallow places. The earliest improvement towards a removal of these difficulties consisted in the adoption of rafts or boats, and guilds or corporations of raftsmen and boatmen, under the following names, were formed to transport travelers and merchandise across rivers. But the times were lawless, and these watermen often plundered than assisted their patrons. Benevolent persons therefore saw the necessity of erecting hostelries on the banks of the river at frequented places, and of constructing bridges for the transport of travelers and their goods. All the architectural labors of the period were, as is well known, entrusted to the guilds or corporation of builders who, under the designation of traveling Freemasons, passed from country to country and patronized by the church, erected those magnificent cathedrals, monasteries, and other public edifices, many of which have long since crumbled to dust, but a few of which still remain to attest the wondrous ability of these operative brethren. From them only could be derived workmen capable of constructing safe and enduring bridges. Accordingly, a portion of these Freemasons, withdrawing from the general body, united under the patronage of the church into a distinct corporation of Frere Pontiffs, or bridge builders. The name which they received in Germany was that of the following, or Brethren of the Bridge. A legend of the church attributes their foundation to Saint Benezet, who accordingly became the patron of the order, as Saint John was of the Freemasons proper. Saint Benezet was a shepherd of Avelard in France, who was born in the year 1165. He kept his mother's sheep in the country, says Butler, the historian of the saints, being devoted to the practices of piety beyond his age, when moved by charity to save the lives of many poor persons who frequently drowned in crossing the Rhone, and being inspired by God, he undertook to build a bridge over that rapid river at Avignon. He obtained the approbation of the bishop, proved his mission by miracles, and began the work in 1177, which he directed during 7 years. He died when the difficulty of the undertaking was over in 1184. His body was buried upon the bridge itself, which was not completely finished till 4 years after his decease, the structure whereof was attended with miracles from the first laying of the foundations till it was completed in 1188, divesting this account which Butler has drawn from the Acta Sanctorum of the Bollanist, of the miraculous, the improbable, and the legendary. The naked fact remains that Benezet was engaged as the principal conductor of the work in the construction of the magnificent bridge at Avignon, with its 18 arches, as this is the most ancient of the bridges of Europe built after the commencement of the restoration of learning. It is most probable that he was, as he is claimed to have been, the founder of that Masonic corporation of builders who, under that name of Brethren of the Bridge, assisted him in the undertaking, and who, on the completion of their task, were engaged in other parts of France, of Italy, and of Germany in similar labors. After the death of Saint Benezet, he was succeeded by Johannes Benedictus, to whom, as prior of the bridge, and to his brethren, a charter was granted in 1187, by which they obtained a charter and cemetery, with a chaplain. In 1185, 1 year after the death of Saint Benezet, the Brethren of the Bridge commenced the construction of the Bridge of Saint-Esprit over the Rhone at Lyons. The completion of this work greatly extended the reputation of the bridge builders, and in 1189 they received a charter from Pope Clement III. The city of Avignon continued to be their headquarters, but they gradually entered into Italy, Spain, Germany, Sweden, and Denmark. The Swedish chronicles mention one Benedict between the years 1178 and 1191, who was a bishop and bridge builder at Skara in that kingdom. Could he have been the successor already mentioned of Benezet, who had removed from Avignon to Sweden? As late as 1590, we find the order existing at Lucca in Italy, where, in 1562, John de Medicis exercised the function of its chief under the title of Magister or Master. How the order became finally extinct is not known, but after its dissolution, much of the property which it had accumulated passed into the hands of the Knights of Hospitallers or Knights of Malta. The Guild or Corporation of Bridge Builders, like the Corporation of Traveling Freemasons, from which it was an offshoot, was a religious instituted, but admitted laymen into the society. In other words, the workmen or the great body of the guild were of course secular, but the patrons were dignitaries of the church. When by the multiplication of bridges the necessity of their employment became less urgent, and when the numbers of the workmen were greatly increased, the patronage of the church was withdrawn, and the association was dissolved, or soon after fell into decay, its members, probably for the most part, reuniting with the corporations of Masons from whom they had originally been derived. Nothing has remained in modern Masonry to preserve the memory of the former connection of the order with the bridge builders of the Middle Ages, except the ceremony of opening a bridge, which is to be found in the rituals of the last century. But even this now has become almost obsolete. Lenning, who has appropriated a brief article in the following work, or Brethren of the Bridge, incorrectly calls them Order of Knights. They took, he says, vows of celibacy and poverty, and also to protect travelers, to attend upon the sick, and to build bridges, roads, and hospitals. Several of the inventors of high degrees have, he thinks, sought to revive the order in some of the degrees which they have established, and especially in the Knights of the Sword, which appears in the ancient and accepted rite as the 15th degree or Knights of the East. But I can find no resemblance except that in the Knights of the Sword there is in the ritual a reference to a river and a bridge. I am more inclined to believe that the 19th degree of the same rite, or Grand Pontiff, was once connected with the order we have been considering, and that, while the primitive ritual has been lost or changed so as to leave no vestige of a relationship between the two, the name which is still retained may have been derived from the Frères Pontiffs of the 12th century. This, however, is mere conjecture, without any means of proof. All that we can positively know is that the bridge builders of the Middle Ages were a Masonic association, and as such are entitled to a place in all Masonic histories. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.